I am live. It is Saturday, the 22nd of July 2023, and I'm reading out of Time Out of Mind, which is the autobiography of Joan Grant. I've read quite a few of her books, and I think it's about time I read what she says about her life. She was born in 1907, and she's telling us about her life as a child. We've just been in New York, where there was a very tragic accident. This book is written because she had a lot of questions regarding reincarnation and far memory, and she is an expert on both of this. Therefore, she's written this book, which was published in 1956. Here we are at chapter 7 now. Soothsayers. We spent Christmas in a house on Riverside Drive with a lot of very old people, and soon afterwards I began to look forward to going back to England, as none of my mother's American friends seemed to have any children. When people came to tea, I usually curled up inconspicuously in an armchair so that I could read instead of displaying intelligent interest. One of the visitors I liked was Hereward Carrington. He wrote books about ghosts, but only seemed to see bits of them, swaddled in ectoplasm, which father told me privately was probably cheesecloth smuggled into the seance by the medium. So I was prepared to like another visitor who was said to be psychic. But the moment I saw Aleister Crowley, I thought of him as a kind of human toad. Only Mother and Marjorie were in when he came. Father was playing tennis at the racket club, and Iris was out shopping with Kate. The toad sat on a sofa beside Marjorie and paid her fulsome compliments while she kept edging away. He said she reminded him of a beautiful golden gazelle, which must have been a change from being told she was like the woman in pictures by Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Her beau used to give her Rossetti reproductions, which she hung in her bedroom until there was no more space on the walls for any more. After tea had been cleared away, Mother gave several hints to the toad that it was time for him to go, but he stayed on and on, until at last she gave an even broader hint by saying she had to go and write some urgent letters. The moment she had left the room, the toad took his black pearl tie pin from his purple satin cravat and stuck it into Marjorie's arm. He pretended it was an accident and blotted the bead of blood with his handkerchief, a white silk handkerchief with a purple edge. Marjorie was too terrified to shriek, but when he tweaked out a strand of her hair, she squeaked, "Mother!" She was so frightened that she sounded like a mouse. I was just about to do something, and trying to become the kind of person who would know how to do it, when I saw Mother standing in the doorway. The toad had not noticed her yet. He was gloating at Marjorie, saying, "Now, you are in my power, for I have your blood in your hair. I need a nail paring too, but I'm so great a magician that I can manage without it." Then Mother was really splendid. She looked at least twice as tall as usual, and her eyes seemed fiery and enormous. "My white magic is stronger than your black magic," she declaimed. "Down on your knees, you grubby little sorcerer." Her voice went through him like a sword, and I almost expected him to ooze over the cushion. He tried to outstare her, and then half tumbled, half slid off the sofa and shambled across the room. He pawed at the door handle, and then I heard him stumbling away down the corridor. When Mother was sure he had gone, she sat down abruptly in a chair, and I knew her legs were shaking, as they always do when you come back into yourself too suddenly. "What a very disagreeable man," she said, as though he had been an ordinary person who was a little drunk. She looked sharply at Marjorie. "You're looking quite green, child." Go and give yourself some sal volatile." Then she saw me and for a moment looked worried. But she realized how proud of her I was feeling, and I knew she was very close to tears. She blew her nose and said briskly, "Always remember, I'm an efficient tiger when it comes to defending my cubs." The stateroom tickets and the "Not Wanted on Voyage" labels were on the sitting room mantelpiece, although we were not sailing for another 3 weeks when Mother suddenly stared at them and said, "The Lusitania is going to sink on that voyage. Jack, change the reservations." Then she noticed I was in the room and told me to run along to bed. Father began to argue with her even before I had shut the door, which was rather surprising, as she must have remembered her taking us out of the tennis court before the roof fell in, and after that there was her foreseeing the Titanic. That had happened 2 days before my 5th birthday, so it was on the 10th of April 1912. We were all on the roof of Seacourt watching the Titanic go down the Solent past the Isle of Wight on her maiden voyage. Mother, who until then had been as cheerful as everyone else, clutched Father's arm as though she were dizzy and cried out, "That ship is going to sink before she reaches America." He tried to soothe her, but she only became more agitated. By now everyone was listening. The scullery maid exploded into nervous giggles, and the other servants looked embarrassed and hastily withdrew to the far end of the roof. People gathered round Mother and tried to convince her that the Titanic had been built in a new way, which made it impossible for anything to sink her. All this did was to make her angry. "Don't stand there staring at me. Do something, you fools. I can see hundreds of people struggling in the icy water. Are you all so blind that you are going to let them drown?" I whispered to Iris, "Is this ship really going to sink?" But she did not answer until we had slipped away and were out of earshot. "I don't expect so," she said soothingly. "Mother has always been afraid of shipwrecks because her best friend and the best friend's daughter were on a ship called the Waratah, which vanished without trace." During the next 5 days everyone was careful not to mention the Titanic, but Mother was nervy and Father looked harassed. It must have been almost a relief for her when everyone knew that the Titanic had struck an iceberg, not nearly so lonely as waiting until it happened. I remembered all this so clearly while I was having my bath that when they came up from dinner I crept out of bed and listened at the sitting room door. "Well, it's the best I can do," Father was saying resignedly. "I spoke to nearly everyone in the Cunard office, but the only alternative accommodation they could offer for us was a sailing the day after tomorrow, on the same ship." "Oh, that's all right," said Mother calmly. "The Lusitania is not going to sink until the voyage we were going to. I suppose she will be torpedoed, as it is too warm for icebergs. Poor things, I feel so sorry for them. However, there's nothing we can do about it in wartime, so I better go and tell Kate to start packing." Mother was so relieved at the change of plans that she was not even put out when he gloomily told her that we should all have to travel in very inferior cabins. Marjorie grumbled a bit at having to share with Iris and Kate and me, but I thought it was far more fun to climb a little ladder to bunk bed than to sleep in a stateroom in an ordinary bed. The parents had a 2-berth cabin next door. There was so much luggage in it that Father had to climb over a wardrobe trunk to get to his bunk, which must have been tiresome for him, as he had to keep climbing out again to hand Nux Vomica pills to Mother from a blue Moroccan medicine case with dozens of little bottles in it. Mother had recently become a very ardent homeopath. It was not nearly so enjoyable as the outward journey. The ship did a lot of zigzagging when we were chased by submarines, and Father told Mother, which was rather tactless of him, that he had overheard one of the ship's officers say to another that if they managed to launch the lifeboats, they were so rotten that they would probably sink. Jules Verne Luckily, I had brought the volume, which contained 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, was a great solace when the others were too busy being sick for me to keep comfortably asleep. When I could not avoid thinking about submarines, I imagined myself having dinner with Captain Nemo in the Nautilus, with Father sitting on the other side of him smoking a seaweed cigar. There were no other children on board, and as Father spent most of his time with other men, having grown-up conversations about the war, I made friends with Hull, the lift boy. He drew very well, especially caricatures, and let me run the lift so that he could get on with his drawing. He was doing a particularly funny one of an old man who was asleep with his mouth open on the sofa opposite the lift. When the old man woke up and caught him at it, instead of being angry, he was amused and said that he was an editor from New York and would give Hull a very good job at his newspaper. Hull accepted eagerly. He had always wanted to be an artist, but said that he had another 2 voyages to do to finish his contract. The editor praised him for being so conscientious and bought the caricature for $20. I did everything I could to make Hull promise to stay in America as soon as he got back there, but it was no use. He said it would look as though he was afraid of being torpedoed, and that he would send me a postcard to prove I was only fussing. I never received the postcard. A little later, Mother met an old lady plodding up the stairs in the hotel and asked her why she did not use the lift. "I never go in lifts," said the old lady. "I was on the Lusitania when she was torpedoed. The explosion made the lift gates jam, and all the people in them were drowned like rats in a trap." Hal must have been one of the poor dear rats who would not leave the ship that was going to sink. Chapter 8. Hell on Earth. By the summer of 1915, Father was working for the Munitions Inventions Department of the War Office and only came down to Seacourt for weekends. So I thought it might be amusing to go to boarding school, having recently read several school stories by Angela Brazil. These had been rather a nice change after a more solid diet of H.G. Wells and Conan Doyle, and ploughing through 10 volumes of Captain Marryat, which had been rather hard going, except for the Mr. Midshipman Easy. I only persevered with Marryat because Father thought I was going to enjoy them, and then he put me on to W. Jacobs' sea stories about old salts, who were always chewing quids of tobacco. I experimented with the insides of 4 Turkish cigarettes, but the tobacco in them must have been the wrong kind for chewing, as I was very sick and had such a splitting headache that I was kept in bed for a week. Dr. May thought it was sunstroke until he realized it was only nicotine poisoning, but the sunstroke theory stuck in Mother's mind, and after that she was always insisting on hats. The school I went to in the summer term was Great Missenden in Berkshire. When I knew I was going there, I was happy and excited, for now that John had gone to prep school, there was no one near my own age to play with except during the holidays. If I had been foresighted like Mother about the Lusitania, I would have known that I was deliberately allowing myself to be sent to hell. The demons were disguised as ordinary girls, in white flannel blouses and gym tunics which matched their bloomers of navy blue serge. They had secret societies and private jokes, and their own incomprehensible code, and instantly recognized that I had been brought up in a different way, and must be given no opportunity of joining their herd. At first the mistresses were nice to me because I was good at lessons, but soon they went sour too. There were dozens of silly little rules. Everyone was supposed to sneak on themselves and put a black mark beside their names in the confession book if they had talked after lights out or touched the new wallpaper when they went up or down the stairs. If there were more than 10 black marks, it meant 100 lines at the end of the week. I wrote so many lines that my handwriting has been difficult ever since. I was scrupulously careful to give myself black marks, as I thought it was like being put on my word of honour, or my conscience was clear when the headmistress addressed the whole school after morning prayer. She announced quite blatantly that God was very disappointed because some of her pupils had not been owning up to their sins, and that he had sent a little bird to whisper in her ear and tell her the names of the naughty ones. There was a heavy chandelier hanging from the ceiling above her head, but I had learned by this time that God was unlikely to send it crashing down to punish her, and the dove he used to was too peaceful a bird to bite her ear off, even though she had publicly accused it of being a sneak. She was deliberately teaching children to hate God, so she must be working for the devil. Sometimes something must be done, and quickly. I prayed that God would choose some other champion to fight for him, but there was not a flicker of indignation from the pudding-faced rows of, nor a twitter of protest. Quaking with terror, I managed to get to my feet. "You are a wicked old woman," I shouted. "God never sent his dove to sneak to you. For such a black lie, he ought to strike you dead." After that, my only friends were 6 worms. There had been three worms before. A particularly horrid child had chopped them in half, which I kept in a tin under a stone in the rockery, and 2 stick insects, which had been given to me by the botany mistress. The stick insects made little black pellets in their box, which I thought were eggs, so I made a cotton wool nest for them and stuck it to my chest with sticking plaster, hoping the warmth would help them to hatch. After about a week, one of the prefects found it and roared with laughter. The little black pellets were only stick insect dirts. The days were cold, grey misery, but the nights were even more lonely, for I had to sleep in a dormitory with 6 other girls, so Jenny never came to see me. Before half-term I decided to run away. This needed careful planning, as I could not escape to the town and take a taxi because the £3 notes Father had given me had been locked safely away as soon as I arrived, and I could not travel far on 6p a week pocket money. I found out from a friendly van driver that the last train to London went at 3 minutes past midnight. If I stowed away on it, there would be no train until the morning for a mistress to follow me. It ought not to be too difficult, for boys in books were often stowaways, and ships and trains should be even easier. No one heard me climb down from the balcony. Fortunately, there was curly ironwork to which I tied a rope ladder, made from skipping ropes stolen from the gym. I ran silently along the grass verge of the avenue. This was the worst bit, as it was supposed to be haunted, and made good time to the station. There was no one about, and the platform lights were very dim, so I hid until the train came in and slipped into the luggage van and crouched down behind some milk cans. The van was not even opened at the next 2 stations. It was cold, but I was tremendously excited at the thought of how pleased Father would be to see me when I arrived in time to have breakfast with him at the Royal Automobile Club. I had no anxieties about getting there, for at Paddington I would take a taxi and tell the hall porter to pay for it. Then I heard voices. The doors of the van slid back and a man came in carrying a lantern. I was well hidden, but he found me. On the platform was a policeman. I had not allowed for the appalling ingenuity of schoolmistresses. They had found the rope and guessed that I was making for London. While the roads near the school were being searched in cars, they had also warned police stations up the line. "Cowardy, cowardy custard. Poor baby can't bear being away from its mummy," the demons chanted. At least they could not add the taunt of "crybaby," for my nose often bled, so I kept a handkerchief daubed with red ink in my pocket, so that I could clap it to my face and rush out of the room when I felt that horrible tight feeling in my chest, which means you are so full of tears that nothing can stop them brimming over. In an attempt to prove that I was not cowardly, I challenged the largest available bully to 6 rounds without gloves on. In any case, there were no boxing gloves in the gym. Rather to my surprise, she readily accepted and agreed to fight me in the dormitory at midnight. When I said I would fetch my sweets from the cupboard in the dining hall to provide refreshments for the ringside spectators, quite a number of girls said they would risk coming to watch. It was strictly forbidden to take your own sweets, or anybody else's, and however the box lavish, only 3 sweets were doled out after lunch each day by a mistress, and the rest left to go stale. I got my 3 boxes of chocolates and a plum cake in a tin that Mother had sent the day before without any difficulty, because I had had plenty of experience of moving quietly through a darkened house. About 30 girls, whispering and giggling, were in the dormitory when I got back, and helped me to move the furniture and mark out a ring on the linoleum with toothpaste. My opponent was gloating, being 4 years older than me and 2 stone heavier, but I had behind me the incalculable weight of Sergeant Major Spencer. I told her the Marquis of Queensberry's rules, or as much of them as I could remember, and she agreed to abide by them. If I had known her better, I would have started with a penny in my fist, for she cheated abominably, scratched, kicked, bit, and even pulled my hair. Eventually, I lost my temper and split my knuckles on the bridge of her nose. Her silly nose was not even broken, though it streamed with blood. Instead of grinning when I tried to shake hands, she screeched, and one of the little beasts ran and fetched the headmistress. The headmistress dragged me by the hair to a bathroom and said I would spend the night there, locked in and on my knees, begging God to forgive me for my sins. Luckily, there was a cupboard of clean bath towels, so I made myself a comfortable bed in the bath and enjoyed the first private and peaceful night since I came to school. I was feeling so virtuous that I knew God would be pleased, but I was not sure whether to thank him or Sergeant Major Spencer for my victory. So I thanked both. A rumour that I had attacked the prefect unprovoked, and while she was asleep, soon spread through the school, and I was more unpopular than ever. I wrote anguished letters home imploring them to take me away, but though the possibility never occurred to me, the letters were destroyed by the mistress, who censored them before stamping. Mother sent me a book called Misunderstood, about a boy to whom everybody was horrid until he died, when they all felt dreadfully sorry. As neither father nor mother even mentioned my misery in their letters, I should have to give them a sharp lesson, and this I could only do by dying. Clearly in my mind's eye I saw myself lying in a coffin, while my hard-hearted parents knelt sobbing beside my bier, which was wreathed in luxurious white flowers. After their hearts were probably melted, I would appear to them, an angelic and beautiful ghost, and smile my forgiveness before floating gracefully away to some happier realm where I would be fully appreciated. I was considering methods of putting this plan into operation. I disliked the sight of blood too much to open a vein in the bath like a Roman, and was too frightened of heights to relish throwing myself from the balcony, when a mistress provided the solution by saying that if I ran about without a dressing gown, I should catch my death of cold. I waited until the other girls were asleep, and then went on to the balcony in my nightdress and poured a ewer of water over myself. It was freezing hard, and I made myself stay outside until the nightdress froze enough to crackle. I was determined to make a really good job of getting pneumonia and not be left even more miserable with a streaming cold. Except that having pneumonia rather badly is uncomfortable. The plan worked admirably. Mother fetched me away in an ambulance, and even though I was slightly delirious, I knew she was going to give the headmistress and the matron a good rich slice of hell I had suffered, a good slice of the hell I had suffered in their boarding school. So that was quite interesting. The next one is chapter 9, which is entitled Night Duty. Have a nice Saturday.